So you want to know what Dungeons and Dragons is? Well, you probably heard of it before. I mean, you clicked on this video in the first place. You might have even seen some of the weird dice that Dungeons and Dragons gets you to roll. Dice like you might find on my t-shirt. Look at this. You see the happy cat with his dice. Dungeons and Dragons appears all over pop culture, especially in explosive mega hit Stranger Things. I mean, if you've ever seen that show, the characters constantly talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but despite this, you might not have ever been told what it actually is. And now you're curious, and if you want to learn more, well, this is the video for you. Oh yeah, Dungeons and Dragons is shortened to D&D. That's a good place to start, actually. As we go along, I'm going to be hitting you with terms like this, and I'll pop something above me that'll help cement it in your mind, make it a bit clearer. Right, let's answer the big question. What is Dungeons and Dragons? Well, simply put, Dungeons and Dragons is a game. You can play from 2 to 6 players, generally speaking, and you might have thought it was a board game. After all, it can be played with pieces that go on a board and you roll dice, all that classic stuff. And strangely enough, you don't even need any of those things I've just listed. You can play with just a pen and some paper. You can play with just your imagination. D&D is what we call a tabletop role-playing game, or TTRPG for short. It originally came out in 1974 and was a cultural phenomenon. Now in 2025, it's estimated there's over 50 million players worldwide. It has spawned novels, movies, and video games, and the game itself has changed a lot over the years. In fact, every couple of decades, they rejig the rules. We call these rejigged books editions, and this is probably the most popular one. This is 5th edition. Came out in 2014. It's a fairly chunky book. Despite the changes through the years, the basic concept has stayed the same. A group of friends come together, and one of them takes on the role of the Dungeon Master. Now, the Dungeon Master does lots of different things. They're a storyteller, an actor, a teacher, and a referee. They create a medieval fantasy setting and fill it with characters, magic and monsters, and adventures with story hooks, all for the other players at the table who will take on the role of heroes. These players create characters to go on these adventures, and these characters have amazing skills and abilities. We call these heroes playable characters, PCs for short. The players create a character sheet. It's like a funky little document with everything their heroes can do. And they will roleplay as these PCs. They will pretend to be them, and they will go up against what the Dungeon Master has prepared. So the PCs explore the world. They solve problems and they fight monsters. They'll also travel to exotic locations, overcome dangerous traps, and hopefully find a lot of shiny treasure along the way. They'll have all sorts of social encounters in this world with other characters who are created and voiced by our Dungeon Master. We call these characters non-playable characters, or NPCs for short, because the players can't control them. As they overcome challenges, the PCs get stronger. They level up. They start at level 1 and go all the way to level 20, and at that point, they're unstoppable heroes of legend. Which is great because these adventures usually have a big bad evil guy to face off against, or a BBEG as it's known in the business. It's kind of like a final boss in a video game, a really tough character controlling all the other bad guys and the one crafting the evil master plan. Okay, so we've covered the very basics. Here's the next question. Why do we need D&D in the first place? I mean, this just sounds like fun imagination time with friends. We can just sit on a sofa and ad-lib a story. Why do we need to go out and buy these big, heavy books? Well, the answer to that question is rather simple. Yes, absolutely, you could. The 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons has 3 main books. We've got the Player's Handbook, which you saw before. We've got the Dungeon Master's Guide. And we've also got the Monster Manual as well. On top of that, there's a bunch of other supplementary stuff you can buy as well. And if you start to tally up the costs, it can get pretty expensive. But here's the thing. If it is just your friends ad-libbing a story, who decides what happens? Who gets the final say in that? I mean, what if one person thinks this should happen and then another player says no, the opposite thing should happen? How would you make a decision as a group? How would you keep things fair while making sure the story is exciting? That's where D&D and its books come in. These books contain loads of rules to help create a concrete shared world where you can keep things fair but maintain the stakes. Now, what do I mean by that exactly? D&D has a clever dice rolling system that uses a 20-sided dice, or a D20. So the way it works is you roll the dice to determine outcomes. So the Dungeon Master will throw challenges at our players who will try and come up with clever solutions to get around them. The DM then interprets their ideas and gives them a challenge to roll against. We call this number the difficulty class, or DC. So, if the difficulty class is 10, our players roll the dice, and if they roll higher than that, you succeed, well done. But if you roll lower than the 10, the 1, there you go, you fail, that's no good. Our characters we create, our PCs, well, they have strengths and they have weaknesses. If they're good at something when they roll, well, they get to add a bonus to their rolls to help them succeed. If they're rubbish at what they're trying to do, well, they receive penalties instead, making it more likely to fail. This makes for a creative and exciting dynamic. You have this back and forth between the players and the Dungeon Master, where you can come up with these amazing ideas together, but success is not guaranteed, and no one knows what's going to happen. Folks, it's incredibly cool. The books also come up with loads of ideas for you, saving your time. For example, the Monster Manual, we looked at it earlier. Well, this is a book just full of monsters and what they can do. You could play for hundreds of hours and never encounter the same monster twice. Awesome. This book is great. I keep it by the toilet. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, but here's another question. What's the point? Seriously, why play this game at all? It sounds like a lot of extra work, especially for the Dungeon Master. Why not just go play Pictionary or whatever? Well, I'd say, yeah, D&D probably does take a little bit more work than your standard board game, but it absolutely is worth it, because D&D offers something quite unusual. D&D, at its heart, is a collaborative storytelling machine, where the players work with the Dungeon Master to create the most interesting story they can together. And that means going with the highs and the lows. So, when you're rolling high and things are going well, your PC's doing heroic things, that feels awesome. But better yet, things get really exciting when the rolls don't go your way. When your ideas don't pan out, when you start to lose fights, when your heroes are on the back foot, that adds real tension to the game. It throws questions on your players. How are you going to get out of this one? Can you overcome? Can you survive? Can you stop the bad guy even when things have gotten really bad? And if they do overcome and still save the day, oh my god, the dopamine explosion in your head is just so big. Ah! It's awesome, and you just don't get that from your regular board games. No shade to board games, I love board games, but it's a different beast. When I was describing the game earlier, you might have thought the DM was the adversary, like they were trying to beat the other players. That's not the case, they're not trying to win. The DM is more like a film director, with the players being the actors. Essentially, they're trying to balance all the creative elements and make the story as dramatic as possible. We want our games to be thrill rides, and that means the DM controls the adversity. If things are going too easy, well, on the fly, they can make things a little bit harder. If it's going too hard, well, our DM can pump the brakes, give our players a bit of breathing room. After all, we don't want to wipe out the team. This sometimes happens, and we call it a TPK, which stands for a total party. A total party. Okay, how about a total party unalivement? And YouTube is weird about words. Being a DM is a unique and very fun challenge. When things are working, it can feel absolutely incredible, and it might just make your friends look at you in awe and wonder, wow, I never knew they were that cool. But don't get me wrong, being a player is great as well, especially when you suggest an idea that your DM hadn't prepared for, that they hadn't considered. Suddenly, they have to adjust this world that we're all running together. It's kind of like they're driving a car and trying to keep the wheels on, while every other person in the car has a hand on the steering wheel and they're trying to drive it off the cliff. It's a great experience for everyone involved, but yeah, as a DM, you gotta be ready to roll with the punches a little bit. You never know what the players might throw at you next. Alright, here's another question for you. How long does D&D take to play? Dungeons & Dragons is really flexible. You can play it just once for a few hours in the evening. We'd call this a one-shot, and one-shots are great to test out if the game is for you, or if you want to see if your players work together well, all that good stuff. It's a good testing zone. And if you like it, well, you can start to play more. You do more sessions, and we'd start to call these sessions adventures, and this is where things get really fun. With your adventures, you could do once a week, an evening for a few hours, or you could do it once a month for an entire day. It's up to you how you want to play the game, but eventually you're going to encounter quests that take more than one session to deal with. At this point, we'd stop calling it an adventure and we'd start calling it a campaign, a story that's going over multiple adventures. Campaigns can go on for months or years in real-world time, and I know that sounds daunting, but honestly, this is where things get really good, because D&D can do things that books, movies, and video games can't. It can create this amazing sense of legacy. Because as you play, you build on the decisions that you've been making, and the world starts to develop and get fleshed out. So in your 20th adventure, you can have a shock twist that's come from a decision you made in the first adventure, hundreds of hours of gameplay ago. When this starts to happen, you realize you're not just messing around with your friends, you're creating an ongoing story that really is something quite special. Now at this point, I know your excitement for D&D has hit a fever pitch, but you've got another question. You're thinking, Mike, isn't D&D just for kids? Not at all. D&D is for everyone and all ages. In fact, the game is really customizable. You can add what you want to your table, you can take out what you don't, you can customize it for your players and what they enjoy. No two D&D tables are quite the same, but you can make a game for literally anyone to enjoy. I suspect D&D is really good for you. I mean, running and playing the game, well, it promotes creative problem solving, it boosts confidence as you ad-lib, and it gives you a free space to be creative and imaginative. Not only that, there's been quite a few studies like this one that suggest playing D&D regularly can be really good for your mental well-being. That's one of the reasons I think absolutely everyone should give D&D a go at least once in their lives, and yes, that includes you. And there you have it, you now know what Dungeons & Dragons is, you big nerd. Well done. And I hope you enjoyed the video and that I piqued your interest in the game. If I have, well, stick around. My next video is going to be all about how to play D&D. That's right, I'm going to teach you how to play the game. In our modern world, we have all this amazing technology, but I actually think it's really easy to feel isolated and alone. And I believe D&D can be this incredibly stabilizing pillar in people's lives. You get your group together, you make a schedule, you start to play regularly, and before you know it, you have this wonderful communal activity, something that you and your friends can look forward to, and then when it's over, you can remember fondly. And that's the same case for me. I've got an amazing group of D&D friends. Some of my fondest memories are D&D sessions we've shared together. I can't recommend it enough. And what's really exciting is D&D is not the only tabletop role-playing game out there. There are loads of other games out there that aren't medieval fantasy that you might really love. For example, you might want to try out Mothership. This is a sci-fi horror role-playing game. Instead of a dungeon master, you have a game master, but it's the same idea. They create a sci-fi world and fill it with terrifying space monsters that your players, well, they become basically horror movie victims trying desperately to survive and not go crazy. And hey, if you've got a nerd interest, well, there might just be a tabletop RPG based on that interest. For example, I love Fallout, the video game and the TV show. You bet they've got their own TTRPG. It has you being a gunslinging survivor in a post-apocalyptic slice of Americana. It's got lasers and robots. It's pretty fun. And that's just an example. I'm sure your interest has one as well. Playing D&D with your friends is a recipe for a good time, and who knows, it might just boot the door open to a hobby that you didn't even know about. It could be a hobby you enjoy for the rest of your life. I'm Mike the Map Maker. Thanks for watching. Keep on trucking.